Hello and welcome back to the Lore Raider, and the first Tomb Raider video of 2023. Johnathan Kagan is an interesting figure in Tomb Raider lore, both in and out of universe. The most interesting facet of which is that the fact that he is Lara Croft's first real rival she ever had in any Tomb Raider media, and a worthy opponent at that. So, join me today as we take a closer look at the character of Johnathan Kagan. Hailing from the Tomb Raider The Journey's comic timeline, which diverged from the series' comic timeline, Johnathan Kagan is introduced in issue number 1 of the Journey's series. When Lara Croft is vacationing off the coast of Peru after a stint in Rome, she comes across the Kagan's Revenge, a pirate ship that appears to be straight from the age of exploration, precisely because it is straight from the age of exploration. Kagan surprises Lara with his gentlemanly charm and the fact that he runs his crew democratically and treats his crew with respect, as opposed to being some sort of iron-fisted leader. Meanwhile, Lara, for her part, quickly discovers Kagan and his crew are actually stuck in a time loop of chasing after a ship full of treasure, only to be gunned down by their cannons in the process. When Lara revives after the first go of this time loop, she tells Kagan that his orders would get them all killed. Now, Kagan displays his surprising lack of ego despite being captain of the ship and quite literally washes his hands of all responsibility, telling Lara that he'll let her lead the operation, but if she fails alone. And shows this lack of ego again when he allows Lara to lower his pirate flag, which even his crew thinks is going too far. Kagan's trust ultimately pays off, of course, as this allows the ship to seem like a wounded, friendly vessel which catches their prey off guard. The successful heist goes off flawlessly, and back on the ship, Kagan seems impressed by Lara's leadership. However, the success of the heist also broke the time loop, and Kagan's ship disappeared from her time and returned back to his era. You'd think that would be it for the story of Johnathan Kagan, that he would have long since died by the time of the modern day. Well, this takes us to issue number 3 of the comics. In modern day, archaeologists had discovered the biblical lost cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, the ancient cities supposedly destroyed by God himself. While Sodom had been found on public land, Gomorrah was on private land up for auction. On one hand, you had the McFadden brothers and their organization seeking to buy the land to allow for proper excavation of the ruins. On the other hand, you had the mysterious private contractor known as Mr. Kagan, also attempting to buy the land and doing so for the highest price. The McFaddens are forced to turn to Lara Croft to try and stop the purchase of the property, and Lara accepts the challenge purely because this Kagan fellow is involved. Lara Croft, being basically Batman, manages to do just that. By stealing the sun amulet from the city, she woke the dead of the ancient city and exposed them to the light of day for anyone to see. Well, the mysterious Kagan wasn't interested in buying a skeleton-ridden ruin and stormed off to his helicopter. However, the truth is revealed at the end of the comic. It was a matter of Kagan turning the deal down because, upon seeing the undead, he knew the sun amulet had been stolen. We find him telling his agent to look into Lara Croft, who he suspects is behind this whole charade, before revealing the secret to his immaculate archery technique. It's all in the wrist. On the surface, it may seem that the shadowy Kagan has dark ambitions here, but we find out in the next issue that Kagan is really just a petty rival. Just as Lara joined the hunt for Gomorrah because Kagan was involved, Kagan finds out that Lara is looking for this chariot burial and literally only joins it just to get a drop on Lara Croft. And get the drop on Lara Croft, Kagan does. However, their confrontation doesn't last long, as not only does Lara hallucinate Kagan and his crew back in their old pirate garb and faints, but immediately after, the allure of riches and treasure causes his crew to mutiny Kagan and force the two would-be adversaries to work together. Lara confronts Kagan during their stints together about his pirate adventure days, but he truthfully believes her to be crazy, having no memory of the event. Now, being intelligent viewers, I'm sure you realize this is a case of two-bit thugs forcing the protagonist and the rival of the protagonist to work together. And as intelligent viewers, I'm sure it wouldn't surprise you to hear that the protagonist and the rival of the protagonist easily backhand the two-bit thugs. So there's that. But however, during the brawl, Kagan this time has a hallucination that causes him to faint, as he too sees his pirate past. When he comes to, Kagan finds himself tied up by Lara, who naturally doesn't turn him over to the cops, but for his trouble in helping, Lara does give him credit for helping her discover the chariot burial and leaves him there for the authorities to find. While Lara Croft may have found it all in good fun, the shock of Kagan's hallucinations, as well as the anger at being left behind in a literal minefield, had snapped something in Kagan. Although off-screen, Kagan managed to track down a powerful artifact known as the Dream Spear, which belonged to the tribes of New Zealand. With it, he could not only reanimate the dead, but bend reality to his will as he saw fit. But there was one thing that stood in his way, one catch, and that being Lara Croft herself, who had unironically been contracted by the ghost of Winston Churchill to stop Kagan. Yes, it's wacky. As she chased the madman down, her movements through the underworld carved a path of destruction in the real world that killed dozens, if not hundreds. Finally, at the heart of all existence, the two would confront one another for the final time. Kagan revealing that after the fiasco at Gamora, something about Lara tugged at his subconscious. In truth, the chase for the Dream Sphere wasn't about power. It had all been Kagan's attempt to discover why he and Croft seemed predestined to constantly cross paths. And in this final battle, he reveals the truth to not only his nemesis, but to us. The truth being that Lara Croft and Johnathan Kagan had been fighting each other for eternity across various lives. And in every single incarnation, Kagan had either been imprisoned by Lara Croft or killed by Lara Croft. In a sense, Kagan had been the eternal victim of Lara. Of course, Lara would again defeat Kagan as she is destined to do so, but unlike every time prior, she felt guilty for her past actions and decided to not let Kagan die this time and offered him a choice. He could either choose to live as her assistant in her cushy mansion or rot in the British prison system. He did not choose to live in the British prison system. Kagan would spend the better part of a year with Lara, initially being locked in a basement, but over time becoming her full-on partner in her operations. The last we see of Johnathan Kagan is he and Lara are tracking down the killer of Lara's old mentor named Miles, of which Kagan did the lion's share of the work and managed to track the guy down. Heading to a gala hosted by the murderer, Kagan confronts Lara on her general lack of trust in him and even self-monologues that he could have left her months ago and that he wonders what is really going on behind the scenes. It turns out Lara was in part holding back on him because this plan would involve her killing her mentor's murderer. And this Lara uniquely is the only version of the character to have taken an oath to never kill. So when she hesitates in shooting her target and gets shot herself by his guard, it's Kagan who comes to her rescue, maintaining his old, slightly dark sense of humor before promising to never shoot anyone again, presumably now with Lara's trust. But that was the story of Johnathan Kagan, the man haunted by Lara Croft through an infinite number of different lives, the second-tier rival who could never catch a break, and discovering that fact turned their budding rivalry to a destructive but understandable desire by Kagan to not lose his life or freedom to Croft yet again. And when he was given a second chance at life, Kagan proved to be a man without an inflated ego, doing his best to work with his new partner in crime and turn his life around. A lovable scoundrel with good intentions. I think Kagan is honestly one of the most compelling adversaries Lara has ever faced, because for the first and possibly only time in the series, Lara Croft's devil-may-care attitude and indeed her own callousness created her own nemesis, and in the end, both protagonists and antagonists come out of the story as better people. But hey, you know how I leave you. Be safe, be wise, and please pray for a true peace in space.